Hey, hello friends. Thank you for joining me again today. Give me just a minute to stop to finish a delicate mark. There we go. All right, welcome. Again, my name is Dan. Am I in there? Barely. If I lean way over, you can see me. But you're not here to see me, you're here to see Daily Art Adventure number 769. More adventures in the final edit layer. I occasionally get requests to, in fact, do more of this, more broadcasting of this final edit layer. I've been working for a little while. Some of you might have been with me yesterday, and I indeed have done a little bit of work on the painting. Not a lot. A lot of today was taken up. People ask me often, do you paint every day? And I say, oh man, I wish I did. The great part of my job is when I'm painting. The necessary evils to complain a little too vociferously. The necessary evils is all the other stuff I need to do. Marketing, health insurance. You know, that's not part of my job. That's just life. A little while ago, my daughter, my precious daughter, is 37 years old. One of the truly few perfect human beings on the planet. But it's not fun to hear somebody brag about their adult children who turned out perfect. Especially if the one listening happens to be one of her siblings. But anyway, gee, that sounded, by the way, like I was being facetious, like she's very imperfect. I was being facetious because, of course, nobody's perfect. But I wasn't being facetious in suggesting that she is indeed a remarkable young lady. Anyway, I was sort of complaining to her, not overly vociferously, but it had been a hard day doing it. She admitted that she had the same struggles and issues with some of the administrivia of life. She's a personality very much like mine, very gifted, sensitive soul, artistic. She's not an artist, although she so could have been an artist. Up until a few years ago, when I had the opportunity to tutor someone I would consider a true prodigy, art prodigy, for a while. Up until then, my daughter was the best, most gifted art student I've ever had, bar none. Until I say, like a few years ago, it's another story. I did get an opportunity to tutor a young man for a while who's, in my opinion, truly prodigious talent, to use the term. She is very gifted, but just has no interest. Go figure. I've wondered on more than one occasion if I should have been like the medieval father, frankly, with both of my biological children, our daughter and our son. And I should have, I wonder if I should have just said, no, you are my child. You clearly have the skill. That's not the word I'm looking for, but that's all right. I'll use that word. Both my son and daughter, very gifted artists, but neither one of them chose to become artists. And I wonder if I should have just forced them. I didn't. And of course, you can't really force them. I'm being, once again, facetious in that regard. Anyway, so my daughter complained that she also really did not like, the administrative hassles of adult life. And I apologized to her profusely for bequeathing to her my genes in that regard. Sorry, daughter. Alicia is her name, by the way. And don't take my word for it. You can ask a lot of her friends if Alicia is a pretty cool person, and they will all tell you, yep. So, as I say, sometimes forgive me for being a proud papa. But I honestly, here's a word of wisdom for any parents, old or young. If you're old parents, I hope you've already learned this. If you don't take credit for the adult children who turned out well, in other words, they turned out well in spite of you, not entirely because of you, then you don't need to take the blame for the ones. Now, I'm not talking about any of my children per se. You don't take the blame for the ones that turn out badly, and if you don't take the credit for the ones that turn out goodly. And my wife and I have very little to complain about, honestly, in that regard. By the same token, we don't boast as though we had done something great. Only a foolish parent or person would claim. Hello, Mark Toomey. All right, there's a bunch of guys saying hello. Michael, Oscar, there's a new comment. Good to hear from you, Oscar. Do I sell your work? My work? Do I sell your work? I try not to sell your work, Oscar, as often as possible. But yes, indeed, I certainly do sell my work. This one that we're looking at right here, by the way, I'm pulling up photo reference on my backup phone here. This one is a commission painting. For many years, Oscar, I was in many art galleries in my part of the country, North Carolina. At the moment, I am in no galleries. That's my choice. Back about 10 months ago, the last of my, personally, the last of my really #1 galleries closed. What I mean is, it was the last one for me. It was the last straw. I pulled out of all galleries back in December because I really wanted to stop and sort of stop the gallery thing, stop and take stock of my career. I feel like it's time for a shift. I'm still in that shift season. I've been selling, at one time I was in 8 different galleries across the state. That was almost too many, honestly. I don't always feel like I did a good job of keeping in relationship with all of them all the time. You can definitely be in too many galleries, in my opinion. Anyway, so now I'm in none, but part of the reason for that is I've been selling more or less at one price level, price break for most of the last 15 years. And I felt like it was time to break out of that price break. So that's what I did. And I'm still in the process of trying to break into, if you will, the new price level. So I've talked about that somewhat in the past. But that's all I want to talk about. That's as much as I want to talk about it right now. I want to talk about painting. Oh, Uncle makes a good suggestion. Show some of my daughter's work one day. Indeed, I will do that. Years ago, she finished high school as a homeschool student. I homeschooled her, basically. You know, we shipped her out for Spanish and math. I didn't want to teach her math and stuff like that, but I was generally the administrator of her classes. We had a great time. We got along very well, as you'd maybe sense already. Conscientious, hardworking, and of course the two of us, we took every opportunity we could to turn any subject into an art project. World history. And she has the most beautiful history timeline ever produced by a high school student somewhere. I don't know if she still has it. And literature. She did an illustration, really just an illustration from Victor Hugo's The Count of Monte Cristo, I think it was. And it was hanging, when she was a senior in high school, it was hanging in our house downstairs. And so, of course, most people, when they saw an illustration, a drawing, black and white drawing, framed, hanging on the wall, they assumed it was mine. So she was 17 and her stuff looked like mine. Close enough to pass, anyway. Anyway. Let's talk about painting. I'll continue on this little red car for a few minutes, and again, this, as I was saying yesterday, the final edit layer is the hardest part of my painting practice, because of the restraint that it requires. It's like holding, if I use a horse analogy, of which I know virtually nothing, like pulling back on the reins the whole time, riding the brake the whole time. I'm saying to myself, don't do too much, don't do too much. Is that stroke really necessary? Is that stroke really necessary? So that's the attitude, the mindset with which I do this final edit. Is this or that stroke really necessary? Let me do just a little bit more on this car before I move on. And yes, I'm driving myself crazy once again, because I am whoops, I was mixing up a red and it just got, all of a sudden it just went in a purplish direction too far. I'm trying to do a dark red at first. So yes, I'm driving myself crazy by painting with one hand. So to that point, if I really am, then yes, I actually do this sometimes. I'll hold the photo reference in my right hand, so that my left hand is free to paint. I'm very right-handed, for those of you who might be new to the channel. No sooner do I do that, though, than I realize, oh wait, I want a little stroke of palette knife right here. Good. Okay, back to left-handed painting now. I've talked about my two-handed painting quite a bit over the years, but I know I always have new people here and there, a few new people coming and watching. So I didn't start painting with two hands till I was about 50 years old. Didn't even try, didn't even think of it, honestly. And but once I started, fell in love with it. It improved my painting instantly, even though I'm quick to add, my left hand felt very awkward. It was a constant fight. A constant fight to force my left hand into submission, into operation. But I kept pushing it, and after a couple of years, the fight ended, and I was victorious over my left hand. I had conquered it. I remember very clearly. I could take you to the very spot I was standing on a sidewalk in downtown Raleigh, painting plein air, painting probably a 36 by 48 inch painting, and I think it was at a festival. So, 10,000 people up and down the street. And I suddenly realized that I was painting with my left hand, and I was unaware of it. In other words, I had been painting with my left hand for several minutes, and I wasn't wrestling with my hand. It was I wasn't even aware that I was painting with my left hand. On that day, that's the day that I say I switched over to, at least to some degree, true ambidexterity. But the point I want you to hear, if you don't paint with two hands yet, let me tell you, what I want you to hear is that even though it took me 2.5, 3 years, I don't know how long it was, from the time I started forcing my left hand to paint until that day when I broke through the barrier into, I'm calling it ambidexterity, my paintings nonetheless improved the very day that I started painting with two hands. So you should do the same thing. Most of you are going to roll your eyes and say, well, that's just you. And it may be. I used to be a lot more gracious about this than I am now. It's sort of my claim to fame, right? If all you guys start painting with two hands, there goes, a little bit of my marketing clout. Two hands and a smile, two hands and a tux are some terms, both terms I've used to describe my live event painting. But, okay, I think that I'm just about done with the front of that car. But while I've got this, hey, Avi. Avi just walked in the door. Okay, you guys have got to see Avi. Avi, can I show my friends? Oh, he's hiding now. Okay. There's Avi, the world's most handsome 3-year-old. Heart-meltingly cute, truly. All right, well, I've got this red on my brushes. Yes?
Why is there little guitars up there?
Oh, there's little guitars up there because I built those guitars when I was 16 years old. Here, I'll show you one, but you can't keep it, okay? You can hold it for just a minute, okay? Big Cub built that when he was a young man. Maybe when you get big, you'll make stuff too.
He's talking in his phone.
You hear somebody talking to my phone? Oh yeah. That you can hear my voice, can't you? I've got a little bit of volume of myself. Here, I'll put that back up now. Is that cute? Do you like it?
Yeah. I just hear the sounds in those, in the little guitar.
Yeah.
It makes sounds.
Yeah, it sounds. That's right. It does make sounds. Okay, where was I before I was so pleasantly interrupted? Yeah.
That's when you throw a banana in a coffee.
That's right. Oh, I'll see if I get the chance. I'll tell you what he's pointing at right now. Not right now,
Because you were trying to put a banana in the coffee.
Yes, isn't that funny?
Yeah.
He says I'm trying to put a banana in the coffee. All right. So back to things that are red. Tail light over here. Tail lights over here. Okay. So final edit painting.
I hear me.
That's.
I hear me too.
I hear you talking. I hear you too.
Yeah. I hear me and Vita talking.
Yes, you do.
And it was watching butt.
All right. I'm going to keep painting now, okay?
I don't draw.
Okay, good. I'm going to draw. He says that's a good decision. Oh no, Uncle 60 says two of his galleries were it's hard getting the paintings back. Oh, I've heard stories like that, Horatio. It's never happened to me, but I certainly have heard some bad horror stories. In that big pad. Open that big pad. It's right in front of you.
It's the paper right here.
Yes. Oops. You catch it? Did you catch it?
I can't.
Okay.
I don't worry, Peter. Yeah.
Very good, very good. All right, you be quiet now so I can talk to my friends on the camera, okay? Is that all right, Avi?
Yeah, that's fine.
So the further I get away from the focal point, the more abstract, of course, my painting will become. And along with that, the softer the edges, generally speaking, the softer the edges and the more abstract. I think of it, one of the words that helps me a lot in this regard is the word energy. The question is, how much energy should there be in any given part of the painting? A beautiful painting, one crazy way to define it would be, is where there's the perfect amount of energy in every square inch, so to speak, of the painting. And it's very, very hard to know what that appropriate level of energy is. So I spend quite a bit of time looking and thinking and then making guesses. That's a good way to describe the painting process, is one is continually making guesses about what stroke will look. You have to, before you put a stroke down, you have to have a feeling about whether it's going to be a good stroke or not. It's like, I wonder if it'll look good if I put this red mark right here. And then Sometimes you decide, yeah, I'll give it a try. So you make the mark, and then after having made the mark, you evaluate and say, you know, sometimes you go, oh, yeah, that was. And that's, you hear me say that occasionally. I say, oh, that's nice. And then often I feel compelled to explain that when that happens, the artist is not boasting. I'm not boasting. I'm as surprised as anybody that that mark looked good. And then sometimes you go, oh, that mark didn't look quite as good as I was hoping it would. And you just keep soldiering on, so to speak. I'll point out real briefly the car here in the foreground. It's not finished, but it's fairly close to finished. I use the term, and this is a trick that I've learned over the years, I use the term camouflage. It's a camouflaged car. That is to say, it's accurately rendered because it's so close to us, the viewer, of course, that I can't get away with gross inaccuracies. So it has to be fairly accurate. But it's also has taken on the color of the background. So basically you see the road here. It's light here and it's dark here. And the car follows that same, little bit of red highlights here that I just put them, but generally speaking, it's the same color as what it's against. So that even though it's a large element in the painting, I certainly don't want it to be a prominent element in the painting. So again, little trick that I've learned because a lot of my paintings have cars in them. I like your comments to each other. Please carry on talking to each other without me. Please relieves me of the responsibility of feeling like I have to entertain you. Entertain you with a nice shot of my bald spot in the back of my head. You know, I found I didn't mind going bald in front quite so much as I minded going bald in back. Because when a feller is bald in back, everybody else in the world wonders, does he realize he's bald in back? And of course I do, because I see myself on camera from the back all the time. So I can harbor no illusions about how much hair I have on the top of my head. Those days of those delusions are gone. All right, I think it's time for me to clean up my palette again. I've just run out of room. You know, yeah, I might want to use these colors over again, but yeah. This is a little bit of my OC personality. Again, I try to draw the line at OCD. Obsessive compulsive is good. Obsessive compulsive disorder, not so good. But anyway, I'm definitely on the OC side of the spectrum. I like order. So after a while, this messy palette just gets to be a little bit too much for me. So I'm going to clean it up. Are you watching me there, Avi? Do you like my movie? He's watching my iPad monitor with rapt interest. And while I'm at it, forgive me, I'm going to step up for a second and get some Naples yellow.
Why is that guy sleeping?
I don't know.
Why is that guy
He's still here, isn't he?
Why is that guy close his eyes?
Oh, just because he's laughing. He's a laughing man. Is that okay?
When I pull like this right here, and sometimes he looks at me.
Oh, sometimes he looks at you?
And sometimes he stares me.
Oh, sometimes he scares you?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry, buddy. You don't have to be afraid of him, though. He's a funny guy.
I thought he's not guy, but he's a funny guy.
Oh, boy. I'm trying to decide whether to tell you, bring you in on that conversation or not. Some other time, I'll show you what he's talking about. All right. There's still a lot that needs to be done in this painting. I'm not even anywhere close to, light at the end of the tunnel. I am following the age-old wisdom of painting evenly around the canvas. That is, don't stick in one area. Don't get stuck in one area till it's finished. Move around. So I am certainly doing that. I'm right now, because now I've got at least the lightest part of my painting, which is this face right here. I have other places that are close to it, but nothing quite as bright as that. Now that that is in place, it gives me sort of a values stop, hard stop. That's the lightest. And it shows me now that my sky up here needs to be slightly lighter, brighter, whiter. It's an expression I use fairly often. I'm trying to make myself clear. Brighter, whiter, lighter. So I've mixed up a very pale, let me look at that. Nope, I don't like that too much. Add a little more blue to that. A little bit of phthalo and a little bit of Naples. Tiny bit of phthalo and a tiny bit of Naples yellow in this titanium. And of course, this is pretty easy. This is an easy adjustment. That is making some part of the painting. Not talking about a vast expanse. That is a challenge. But making just little details lighter is easy because it's a one-step process. My different yardstick? I think it's down in the garage. I don't have yards. Oh wait, I do. Here you go. Here you go. Here's the yardstick over here. I didn't know you knew that word.
It's been here a long time.
It has been here a long time. That's right. All right, let me talk now to my friends, okay? So making something lighter is quite easy. It's a one-step process. And perhaps you've heard me say, we do not like to see dark paint on top of light paint. Conversely, we do enjoy seeing light paint on top of dark paint. And when I say on top of, I mean that rather, what's the word? Literally, that is to say, we like to see that the light paint was put on top of dark paint, which requires bits of the dark paint showing through around these strokes. So that, again, that's another good description of my final edit layer. It's light opaque highlights, but at virtually no point do you cover up like plaster thickly inundate, wipe out whatever's underneath. You always let some of what's underneath show through, around, sometimes through each stroke. That is, instead of putting down an opaque mark, you actually put down a translucent one. And then very important to me and to my way of painting and thinking is you leave little gaps, to the left and right, up and down, around between your strokes. So you don't run all your strokes together. Let there be daylight, so to speak, if you call what's underneath. I'm calling it daylight. And I am indeed craning my neck a little bit. You saw my photo references up there. I am tilting my head back so that my bifocals, showing my age here. So looking at my photo reference up there. Again, I taught a class this last week on how to paint trees. One of the things I repeated frequently was you learn how to paint trees by looking at specific trees. Same how do you do figure drawings? How do you do human beings? Whoops. Yeah, okay, thanks. I'll help you. There we go. We don't want to knock those down, do we? Anyway, so I am looking at my photo reference frequently and being influenced by it. That old boast that you still hear once in a while. I cringe every time I hear it or read it online. And I painted the whole thing out of my head. It's not a boast. It is great fun painting out of your head, but it does not, as evidently some people think, it indicates some kind of peculiar genius. It does show a kind of intelligence, but it's not one you want to employ very often. When you paint out of your head shrinks. And of course I don't mean that literally. I don't need to say that, do I? Online, I'm afraid I do. This guy says your head shrinks. Blankety blank. We will know the human race has evolved to its next level of consciousness when the level of interaction online improves. Oh, I am not holding my breath. I won't see it in my lifetime. In a couple hundred years. I fully expect to see improvement in this area. Okay, let's talk about, so I just changed to a slightly darker blue than what I was putting on. Lighter than what was there, but darker than what I was doing. And I'm going to blend the boundary between these two colors. All right, I think I like that color. And again, I'm being very fussy with my sky holes and so on and so forth, which they really are sky holes here. Being very fussy with them because it's pretty close to the center, the focal point of the painting, right? As I go out, once again, I will proceed to a more abstract and softer brush stroke. The term final edit is very descriptive of this phase of the painting process. It is in this essentially opaque phase of the painting process is where I decide what gets edited out. What do I keep and what do I eliminate? You can see maybe right here, there was a little orange blush. Well, there was some orange lines, but then just generally a glow of orange in the sky up here. Oops, hang on. And I have to decide, thanks buddy. Yeah, that's pretty hard. That'll fall down, won't it?
Yeah.
There we go. I have to decide how much of that orange blush to allow to show through. And same thing is true in the whole final edit. How much do you allow to show through? And one of the quick answers to that question is, how much do you allow to show through? Quick answer, a whole lot more than you think. And that choice is not based primarily on realism. That choice is more often based on abstract considerations. That is, does this orange look nice peeking through the blue? And indeed it does. I just saw David's comment. David, always quick with a correction. And David is correct that if I want a sense of distance, these trees need to go lighter. And indeed they will. Okay, so I just mixed up again an even darker blue than I was using just a minute ago. So in the final edit layer, again, the challenge, the goal is to try to allow as much of the underpainting to show through as possible. And I'm still on a journey where I am discovering, oh, I didn't need to cover that up. I could have let that keep going. I could have left that showing, so to speak. I like that little bit that just happened right there, just a little bit more phthalo blue on the mixture on my brushes. You see this stroke right here? It's a very strong pencil mark, and it's pure. Oh, you know what? It's time for me to go. My wife and I are meeting some friends for dinner across town, and I am sorry about that. Time flies when you're having fun. I was having fun, and it got away from me. I'll finish some of the paint on my brushes right now. Bye-bye, big guy. All right. Generally, I'm liking it. I wish it was going more quickly. I'm anxious to be done with this painting because I'm being paid for it. I'm being paid for it. Therefore, I want to get it done quickly. I hope I'll have a longer day of painting tomorrow than I had today. I had to do a lot of business today. But it's better. But I warn myself all the time whenever I feel this sense of hurry up. It's like, no, this is not a race. You know, it's not about, I'll be anxious about finishing for 1 or 2 days, and the painting will last 100 or 200 years after those 1 or 2 days. So in comparison, 1 or 2 days of doing a good job is nothing compared to the length of time this painting should be in existence. But yeah, back to David is right. I was possibly being too much influenced by my photograph in the intensity of my trees back there. So David, I'm glad you mentioned it. I think I would have caught it. I'm quite sure. But thanks for mentioning it anyway, because you never know. So there we go. Thanks, folks. Appreciate your company. I will see you maybe tomorrow. So bye.